Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Room. Today we have a very, very special guest. Somebody who I've been watching for, well, most of my life. You guys know about my 80s and 90s WWF collection. This man was all over them. Multiple times in a night, which is quite different to most of the people that you would expect. He was in the WWF from 1989 all the way to, I think it was about 2009. So a very long time. He's been in some of the biggest moments in wrestling history. He's worked with all the top names, and he's even been involved in a main event of WrestleMania. We are very lucky today that we have Jimmy Korderas on the show. How's it going,
Hey, Ben.
mate?
I'm great, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. Thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute honor to have you on here today. That's not
Yeah.
hyperbole or anything like that, because even when I was around 6 years old, I think when I first started collecting the
hmm
WWF tapes, you were always on them. So it's kind of a surreal moment for me because it kind of reminds me of when I was, growing up, when I first started having that love for professional wrestling.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, uh, we as referees, we're not supposed to be the ones who are supposed to be very visible, but at the same time, it's nice when we do get recognized, and especially, uh, like I said, our job is not to be the star of the show. We're there to help the talent tell their story. It's their story, not our story. Like
Right.
I've told these people 1,000 times that no one has ever bought a ticket to see me referee a match. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's about me. So I'm not trying to be overly visible, but it's nice to get noticed.
When you were growing up in Canada before you even started the wrestling business, um, obviously there was big promotions like
hmm
Stampede, there was Maple
hmm
Leaf, Big Time. What were or who were some of the biggest stars from that time that you remember seeing that really got you into wrestling?
Well, being from Toronto, Maple Leaf Wrestling was actually our home base
Mm.
in the territory days. So the Tunnies used to run the territory, and what they did was they had talent come in from different organizations. Like they would get people from WWF,
Mm.
they would get NWA talent, they would get AWA talent, and also other talent that, like you mentioned, Stampede, or even from Montreal, from International Wrestling. But some of my favorites that even going back, it's as crazy as it sounds, as a youngster watching the original Sheik,
Right.
uh, and having his bloody matches. And back then, it was not like today, where I would watch him and go, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's going on." Where today, it's like, "Yes, we want blood." I mean, it's
Right.
such a
Yeah.
different, it's such a different feel. But I remember him distinctly. As I started getting older, I started gravitating towards more like a tag team, like Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, because we were getting a lot of talent up here. They were booking from the Mid Atlantic territory.
Mm.
So we would see Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant. We would get Dusty Rhodes. We would get stars like that. And then, coming in from WWF, we would get a Bob Backlund,
Right.
Jimmy Superfly Snuka. We had so many great talents coming in from everywhere. Roddy Piper, obviously another Canadian. I have to throw that name out there.
Yeah.
A young Bret Hart, who actually wrestled in Toronto as Buddy the Heartthrob Hart, which a lot of people don't know.
Wow. No, I mean,
Yes.
I feel like I am a big Bret Hart fan, but no, I've never heard that name before. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure Bret doesn't want it be reminded of it either. But we were blessed to get a lot of great wrestling. Television on wrestling here in Toronto. We got so many. It was all day long from all the different promotions, and of course hockey is big here in Canada. So for me, growing up, it was all day Saturday watching wrestling, and then in the evenings it was hockey night in Canada. And they even had All Star Wrestling after that on one of the affiliate stations that was from Vancouver. So we were getting West Coast to East Coast wrestling. It was great.
Wow. So So I think the original story, correct me if I'm wrong here now,
Mhm.
you first got your break kind of accidentally, because you were taking photos at the events, is that correct? And selling them
Yes.
outside the venue.
Yes, they used to run Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens every 3 weeks. So I like taking pictures. It was kind of like a little hobby of mine at the time. And I would go and take pictures. And back then, you used to have to develop your film. And
Right, yeah.
there was a developing place called Direct Film. I don't think they exist now, but what they would do is they would double your prints for $1. So I would get a second set of prints for $1. I would keep one set, and I would take that second set with me to the next show and sell them for $2 a picture. And it
Right.
would basically pay for my habit
Yeah.
of my wrestling habit, pay for the tickets. And I went to the office and managed to score the equivalent of season's tickets. So I would sit second row ringside for every show. And it was right beside that ramp that used to be the iconic ramp at Maple Leaf Gardens that went from the locker room to the ring that was level with the ring. So I would get some great pictures and I would be outside selling them. And one day, someone who at the time I didn't know worked for Jack Tunney, his name is Elio Zarlanga. He took the pictures for the program and the magazine, the Stranglehold magazine that they had here in Toronto. And he goes, "Hey, can I see your pictures?" I said, "Sure." "Yeah, here you go." He goes, "Oh, they're pretty good." He says, "How much are they?" I said, "They're $2 a picture." He says, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Why not? Who are you?" And he tells me who he is. And he says he's talking about copyright infringement and all this stuff. And I'm
Right.
starting to panic. Like, oh no, uh, not only may I get arrested, but even worse, I might lose my season's tickets. I was more concerned about losing my tickets over getting
Yeah.
arrested, you know. So he says, "You don't seem like a bad guy. Just don't do it right outside the venue. Just move down the street a little bit, down the block, where they can't see you." So I said, and then we ended up becoming friends. And he asked Jack about possibly bringing me on as a photographer to help him out. And Jack said, "We don't need another photographer, but we'll find something for the kid to do." And I used to just whatever needed to be done on show day. I'd run errands, stuff like that. And every once in a while, I'd get a call from, "Hey, we need you to head out here and pick this up and bring it to the office." And I'd be like, "Okay, cool. And I'd get to hang around backstage all day, which was cool. And then it morphed from there into Jack Tunney would hand me the keys to his Fleetwood Cadillac, this big blue Cadillac he had. And he'd say, "Go to the airport Marriott and pick up Andre the Giant." And I'm like, "Yes, sir." And in my mind, I'm going, "Oh my God, I'm going to go
Yeah.
pick up Andre you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it started that way. And then it morphed into about a little over a year of, again, running around doing all the odd jobs. And one day, Pat Patterson says to Jack, he says, "Jack, we got the kid here. He's running around doing all these errands. And then he's just hanging around during the show. Basically, all he's doing is watching the show. Why don't we use him? We'll make him a referee." And Jack says to Pat, he says, "Well, do we want to smarten the kid up?" And Pat says to him, "Jack, he's hanging out in the locker room with the guys." He
Yeah, of
kind
course.
of he kind of has a little bit of an idea. So Pat told me to get the proper referee gear, which was black sneakers, black pants, the blue shirt, and the bow tie, black bow tie. He told me to carry it with me at all times, and that was my foot in the door.
Had you ever thought of being a ref beforehand, or was it kind of just circumstances kind of created that opportunity for you?
I didn't think about actually being a ref. It wasn't like a conscious effort where I said, "Yes, I want to be a referee." It was, I just wanted to be a part of this business in some form or fashion because I enjoyed it. I loved it so much. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Watching the wrestlers, I, I'm not saying I wasn't athletic. Like in school, I played football, soccer,
Mm.
that kind of football, not the American
Yeah.
football. I played soccer. I played volleyball and basketball in high school. And I was fairly athletic. But at no time whatsoever did I think, "Ooh, I think I can do that."
All right.
So I was like, "Yeah, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do." And then when Pat brought up the refereeing, I remembered old school guys like Tommy Young,
Mm.
and I saw the Hebners before I started, and I'm like, once he brought that up, I went, something went in my mind. I said, "That's something I'd love to try. I think I may be able to do that."
Um, People my age remember Jack Tenney as being like the on-air president of the
Hmm.
WWF, but a lot of people don't kind of realize the history that he had before that role. You know, he took over. Well, he probably hadn't, or he wasn't running Maple Leaf for all that long, right? Because I think he took over from his uncle with was it his cousin, something like that?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
he took over. Frank Tunney used, and I don't know how long back. You know, there's a historian here in Toronto called Greg Oliver. He's like, you want to know anything about the history of Maple Leaf Wrestling, he will tell you to a T, and he won't have to look it up.
Right.
But the Tunney family had been associated with Maple Leaf Wrestling for decades, and I remember, for me, Frank Tunney, which was Jack's uncle,
Right.
and Frank Tunney's son, Ed Tunney, who was Jack's cousin. Once Frank passed away, they ran the promotion, with Jack being in charge. Jack was in charge of the promotion. Ed was looking after the books.
Right. Okay.
Kind of thing. And then when WWF at the time came over and took over the office here in Canada, they remained on board because I don't know if it was technically they needed an office here in Canada, a presence here in Canada, which is good that they did. And they had someone like a Jack Tunney, and they brought in, I said, well, you know what? We can make you the on-air president.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And then once things changed up here in Canada with the office and sort of things, that's when he got phased out, and they brought in Gorilla Monsoon as the acting president.
Like, with that very first match that you refereed, I think it was SD Jones and Jose Rivera. Is that right?
Jose Luis Rivera.
Luis Rivera. That's right.
But he was wearing a mask at the time. He was the Red Demon.
Right. Okay. Obviously you remember that part of the match. Is there much more of that match that you remember, or is that kind of something that is a bit lost to time these days?
Most of it is lost in time. I just remember finding out that day that I was going to referee that match because, again, I had the referee gear with me, but I never thought enough to ask questions, like to go to the other referees and say, listen, here's the deal. Here's what's happening. Pat said I'm going to end up refereeing. How do I do this? I don't know what I'm doing. So when it was sprung on me, Chief J Strongbow was the agent that day, or as the producers, as they call him now. He was the lead agent that day, and he says, Jimmy Jam, you got your ref gear with you? And I said, yes, sir, I do. He says, put it on. You're reffing tonight. And I didn't. What am I going to say? I'm not going to say, well, Chief, I'm not ready.
No.
So I said, okay. He says, you're reffing SD Jones and Red Demon. Get with them. They'll tell you what to do. And luckily, I was really close with SD. SD was a really great guy. So I walked into the locker room. I said, SD. He says, hey, what's up? I said, I got some good news and some bad news. He goes, okay, what's the good news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. He goes, awesome. He says, what's the bad news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. I have no idea what I'm doing. I need help. He says, well, you stay close to me. I'll talk you through it. And he went over some stuff with me in the locker room. And the match time came, and I was, I guess, very robotic would be the proper phrase. I just was like a deer in the headlights a lot of the times, but he talked me through it, and I managed to get through it. And that's when, after the match, he sat me down and just said, okay, you got through this first one, you got it out of the way. Now what you need to do is start to go, like I said, go talk to the other officials, talk to the veterans, talk to the boys, find out what they want from you, what you need to do, how to make it look like you're doing a referee's job properly. And that's what I started doing. And fortunately, I had some great mentors, like I said, the Hebners and Timmy White. And there were some people up here like, I want to say it was John Bonello and Wayne Cashman were up here, and they were helping hand. And a lot of the guys too, a lot of the agents, like I was blessed to have people like Pat Patterson, Jack Lanza, Tony Gurria, those Chief J Strongbow. Even George the Animal Steel at one point was an agent, and people don't realize, because they remember him from his character George the Animal.
Of course.
They don't realize what a great wrestling mind he had.
Well, he was also a high school wrestling coach.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is
people see those are little things that people don't realize, and then they go, wait a minute, George the Animal Steel, how could he teach people? And I mean, guys, you have to differentiate what you see on television from the real person.
I can't imagine going to school in the 80s and thinking, like, they must have realised that that was him and then just
Oh,
looking at
sure.
it, double taking. I just can't imagine trying to do wrestling thinking, that's George the Animal Steel, surely.
Right. So they're probably thinking in amateur wrestling, wait a minute, what does he know about amateur wrestling? He's all punching kicks
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Biting turnbuckles. Um,
Oh
you
my
de-
goodness, yes.
yeah. You debuted in the WWF in 1987 then.
Yes.
And because it's WrestleMania season, we have to talk about all the WrestleManias that you were involved with.
Mm-hmm.
So that very first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 4 that you were
Mm-hmm.
involved with. And
Right.
I think the first time you were shown on screen is when you're helping carry down that massive trophy for the 20-man Battle Royal.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
remember much about that match?
I just remember little funny story like the day before, walking through it.
Right.
We're just doing a walkthrough, like to make sure the placement was okay with us walking the trophy down. Joey Morella, the late Joey Morella, God bless him, walking it down and making sure we place it in the ring correctly and place it where it needs to be and that sort of stuff, and just going through that sort of stuff. But in the rehearsal the day before, I was handing the trophy up to Joey, who was in the ring, and it's kind of hard from the floor to get it up over the top rope. It was a little bit top heavy, so as we were taking it up, it started to tilt over,
Right.
and it snapped in half. The trophy snapped in half, and we started to panic and started, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? And we were at the Trump Tower Casino, whatever the name was back then, at the
Trump Plaza.
Trump Plaza. Yes, Trump Plaza. And some of the workers there were saying, don't worry, we could fix it and make it look like brand new. I'm like, okay. So the whole idea was Bad News Brown was supposed to manage to cheat his way into victory in the Battle Royal. And Bret Hart was the guy he did it against, and Bret would come back in the ring and he'd shoot Bad News out of the ring and start destroying the trophy. The only problem was these guys had fixed it so well, Bret was having a hard time breaking the trophy. I mean, he was stomping the living what out of it, and it just wouldn't go. So then he just finally just picked it up and threw it out of the ring.
That's right.
Yeah. But as far as the other activities, I really don't remember the match itself. I just remember the beginning and the end. That's about it.
There's also another moment during WrestleMania 4, and I need to ask you if this rumor is true. You probably already know what I'm going to ask you. The megaphone shot from Jimmy Hart. Is it true that you were legitimately knocked out?
Yes. Let me preface this by saying that it's weird because usually you don't have a referee take multiple bumps in one show, and I took one earlier during the tournament in the Don Morocco Dino Bravo match.
Right.
Where I took a flying forearm from Morocco, which is not pleasant. He's a big dude, but fine. Everything was cool. And then we get to this match, and it's for the Intercontinental Championship. It's Brutus the Barber Beefcake challenging Honky Tonk Man, who's the champion. And we're getting to the finish of the match, and Honky is caught in Brutus's sleeper hold, which was his finish. Jimmy Hart pops up on the apron, and I go over to him and tell him to get down and try to get him to not interfere. And as I turn around, he swings, hits me with the megaphone, and I face plant. Now, the megaphone shot was fine. I barely felt it. It was okay. The damage came when I landed face first, because when I put my hands down to brace myself, they shot out, and
Right.
my chin hit the canvas, and it hit that sweet spot. And that's the last thing I remember. I was out like a light, and I've seen footage of it back where, I don't know if you've seen it, where they're kind of helping me to the back and my feet are dragging. The guys that were helping me, the refs that were helping me, were mad. They were pissed because they thought I was sandbagging them.
Being
I was
dead
doing
weight.
that on
All
purpose.
right.
Yeah, they thought I was dead weighting them. So when I got to the back, I'm like, I'm just coming around, and they're going, "What the hell's wrong with you? And why were you doing that?" And I'm not. What did I do? They said, "You were sandbagging us out there." And I was like, "What? What did I do? What? I didn't." I didn't have a clue. And then they started going, wait a minute, you really don't know? I said, I have no idea. And I said, oh, okay. Then they left me alone.
Yeah. Once they knew you were okay as well, that's the
Yeah,
moment they
yeah,
left you alone.
yeah, yeah.
A couple of years later, then it must have been a dream come true for you because obviously it hadn't ever been outside of America, and WrestleMania was then going to Canada for the first time, WrestleMania 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the list of names. I just want to read them off for you here. So you were part of the Earthquake Hercules match,
Mm-hmm.
Barbarian Santana match, and also, and you mentioned this guy earlier, the Jimmy Snuka Rick Rude match. I mean, some of
Yes.
those are just like all those matches, some of the biggest names are like the 80s and the 90s all crammed in. What was it like finally getting to be at a WrestleMania, but not just the WrestleMania, but the WrestleMania that's in your home country as well?
It's indescribable. I mean, I could try to uh, fish my memory banks for all the incredible words that I could attach to this, but it just doesn't live up to the feeling. Do you know what I mean? It's your hometown. It's your dream come true to perform in front of an audience that large. I've got the poster up here. 68,237 people.
Wow.
No, sorry, that was 18. No, sorry, that's the second one. Never
Yeah.
mind. But still, it was probably around that same number. But it was incredible. And those names you mentioned were all legends. But what's even more amazing is the names on that show that you didn't mention.
Yeah.
I mean, the main event, Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, there were so many other, like the tag team match. Who was it? Haku. I think it was Haku and Andre the Giant versus.
Demolition.
Was it Demolition?
It was,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, and being in that show, and then finding out later, many years later, that sitting in the crowd watching that show was someone who became a good friend of mine,
Yes.
Adam Copeland, aka Edge, aka Cope, which is, that circle of life, Simba. It was amazing.
That perfect lead into my next question, which is you then managed to main event or referee in the main event of WrestleMania 24 with who you said Edge, who I'd actually forgotten about that story that he was in the crowd at WrestleMania 6.
Hmm.
That's an incredible story. And he faced obviously the Undertaker in that match. Um,
Hmm.
One, how big of it? I mean, it must have just been the biggest honor for you because it's the biggest gig in the world in a
Right.
referee's career. And how long before the event did you know that you were going to be refereeing the main event?
It is. Excuse me for had to mute to clear my throat. Um, it is for a referee the biggest honor to referee a main event at WrestleMania. I don't care what company you work for, or uh, your goal is to be not only in a WrestleMania, is if you get blessed enough to be in a main event of WrestleMania. That is for it to equate it to Americans here. It's like being in the Super Bowl. Now, of
Right.
course, when you're in the Super Bowl, the quarterback it gets all the headlines. The running backs
Yeah.
get all the headlines, unless you're attached to Taylor Swift. Like, anyways, I won't go there.
Yeah.
It's just trying to make a bad dad joke. But that's the equivalent. Or even like you're in the World Cup, and you may
Mm.
not be the captain of the team, you may not be the star player of the team, but you're in the World Cup. That's amazing. But to be that captain and to be in a main event, that's a cherry on top of you know what I mean. So I didn't find out that I was actually working that match until about a week or two before, and I had been assigned another match because for some reason I had been kind of labeled the ladder TLC referee
Mm.
because they for reasons like they had confidence in how I handle myself in those matches to you know make sure the talent is safe, make sure everything goes right, keep tabs on things, So a couple of weeks, a week or two before, like I said, I run into Adam in the locker room and hey, Edster, hey Jimmy, I got to talk to you. He says, okay, what's up? He says, I was talking to Taker, and Taker and I want you to referee our match at WrestleMania. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, I don't have your match. I mean, he says, yeah, don't worry, we can get that changed. And I'm like, oh, okay. He says, are you cool with it? And I said, are you kidding me? I said, you're asking me if I'm cool with it? Yes, yes. So he said, okay. So a little bit later, I'm walking down the hall and I run into Undertaker, and Taker says, hey, Jimmy, you talked to Edge? I said, yes, I did. He says, are you cool with it? I said, why is everybody, I'm thinking to myself, why is everybody asking me if I'm cool with it? Yes, I'm cool with it. Are you kidding me? And he said, I said, yeah, man, I'm in. I'm whatever you need. He says, I'll do my best to be there for you guys. And he says, I know that. That's why we asked for you. I said, wow. So now because I'm my own worst enemy in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I go from this is the greatest thing ever to now I'm putting pressure on myself to be, the best I can be in the ring for them. I don't want to let them down.
All right.
And then, the night before, it's funny, the night before WrestleMania, it's like 2:30 in the morning. And I'm like, just overthinking things. Like we'd gone over things in the green room during the day on Saturday. And, again, I'm in my own head going, oh my goodness, I hope I got to remember this. I got to remember that. I hope I'm, I hope I'm not in the way. I hope, you know what I mean? And then Ken Anderson, Mr. Kennedy, he comes walking by and he says, Jimmy, what are you doing? And I had a bad habit of smoking at the time. So I was having a cigarette, just trying to calm myself down. He says, what's up? And I said, I got Taker and Edge tomorrow and I'm just nervous. He says, what are you nervous about? I said, I want to get this done right. I don't want to F it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He says, how long you been here? I said, I don't know, a little over 20 years. He goes, you've got this. So just stop it. You just stop overthinking it. Just do what you do. You know what to do. And he kind of like sat down beside me and kind of gave me that good old pep talk, but also a calming pep talk. And I was like, okay, cool. And thanks to him, I was able to calm myself enough down to not walk out to the ring and go, ah.
Yeah. Like you were kind of mentioning there, you've ref some of the the biggest matches in WrestleMania history. One of the craziest matches that I can remember in WrestleMania history, and it's another rumor which I'd like you to clear up just in case it is real or not, is the hardcore match at WrestleMania 17. Big Show, Raven, and Kane. And
yes.
There's one of the craziest matches ever where they go in around the entire arena. And there's always been a rumor that when Raven was on the golf cart, it went off the side and it drove over some cables. It was very close to cutting out the feed for the whole show.
That's what everybody was concerned with. What happened was, they were fighting through the back, and I don't know if this was a rib on me, but they had me carrying the title around the whole time while they were fighting around. They get to the spot where there's two golf carts. So Raven jumps in the golf cart and tries to escape down the hallway. And Big Show was supposed to jump on the back, and as they went down the hall in the back, Big Show's his feet are being dragged by the golf cart. But what nobody took into consideration was Big Show was so heavy, when he jumped on the back, it lifted the front of the golf cart, and Raven couldn't steer it properly. So as he was trying to make the right turn to go down the hallway, there was this fence to the left of him if you were to make the right turn, and running right beside that fence. But thankfully there's a little gap, a dip, where the power cables for the lighting and the rigging and that sort of stuff. And he drove right into the fence, basically on top of those cables. And there was a gasp from well, not us, because we didn't realize it at the time, but everybody else, I found out later, were thinking, oh my goodness, he ran over the cables. And then, instead of driving down the hallway, they ran down the hallway. Kane threw me on the back of the other golf cart and followed pursued them, and found out later that there was a big concern that they may have, they were close to uh, cutting the power for the show. That's what I was told.
Wow. I mean, WrestleMania 17 is now known as, I think it's in most people's top five. A lot of people will say it's the best WrestleMania of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy how one little mistake could have completely changed the history of that event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like natural disasters. You don't know if the power gets cut out from a storm or anything like that. Quick story for you that a lot of people don't know. Before at WrestleMania 3, which was in Detroit, at the Silverdome in Detroit, the infamous Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, and of course the match that everybody says stole the night was Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat. I had just began refereeing, so I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to do any WrestleMania matches, but what I was assigned to do by the Toronto office was they used to show uh, the pay-per-views, the WrestleMania pay-per-views via closed circuit
Right.
at certain venues, arenas, and that sort of thing, as well as theaters. So I got sent to London, Ontario, to the London Civic Center, I guess it was called at the time, and I had to oversee the pay-per-view there and also manage the merchandise. And that night there was a violent thunderstorm that knocked out the power to the building. So there was an issue, and this was before cell phones. So how am I supposed to call anybody and let them know? So the power didn't come back on in time. So all we did was just pack up everything and head out. And I had to report to Jack the next day. I said, the power went out. This is what happened. All the merchandise is in the truck, the van over here, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I didn't know how to take care of it with the building. I said, okay, I'll take care of everything. So,
wow, it's just unbelievable how little mistakes or little things that are out of people's controls. It just goes to show how much effort and how much planning goes into every minute detail, especially something as big as WrestleMania.
Right, and it's not only the technical side and the production side; it's also for the talent side, because they take massive risks every day, and especially going into WrestleMania season, you don't want your top stars. You want to be cognizant of their health going in, but at the same time, you can't phone it in on the road to WrestleMania, if that makes sense. Luckily nowadays in today's world where we have a situation with like John Cena and Cody Rhodes, where for the last couple of weeks we've had some mic battles between the two.
That's right. Yeah.
Which have been which have escalated to this past week, which as we're recording, which was a classic. I mean, these guys were locked and loaded and fired some bullets. That's for sure. You can but Cody at the same time during that tour through Europe that they did for a couple of weeks, he performed every night. Yeah. He puts it out there, and not only does he go out there and perform in the ring. I don't know if you had the opportunity to go to any of the events.
I didn't know. We watched them all, and it was nice to watch them at a reasonable time here in the UK.
Right. But he sticks around after the event is done, and he'll be out there for an hour, signing autographs and that sort of thing. And they're tearing down the ring around him.
Right.
As he's signing, and it's like, come on, Cody, we got work to do.
Lastly, on the topic of WrestleMania, you mentioned Cena and Cody this year. What do you think of the build around the event this year?
I think a lot of people have found it to be underwhelming. Outside of one or two stories. I think maybe because the real build started a little late for them, because a lot of people are so used to right after the Royal Rumble. That's when everything starts. The puzzles get put into place. They took a longer this year to put those pieces together, right, if that makes any kind of sense. And I think people were saying, oh, come on, guys, let's get to it. Who are we going to have at WrestleMania? So everybody's a little bit anxious. And I get that. even myself, I found myself a little bit going, okay, guys, come on, when you guys going to amp this up? And now they're starting to. I mean, there's a lot of matches I'm looking forward to. Obviously, the three-way with Punk,
Yeah.
Roman, and Seth, because the intriguing part is, as Seth said, I mean, as Punk said, that was not the favor. So
Yeah, correct.
now there's you've got questions, you got people guessing what is the favor, and outside of that, one match I'm really looking forward to, and I think has the potential to steal the show, and not potential. If I had to bet one match that would steal the show from those other two main events, it's got to be Randy and
Right.
Kevin Owens. I think that match is going to it's going to blow people's minds away, because in my mind, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I know I get blasted on the internet for it all the time. Randy Orton is the most complete wrestler out there. Because from top to bottom, he ticks all the boxes. I mean, there's some fantastic talents out there, don't get me wrong. Everybody thinks that I'm crapping on other guys. I'm not crapping on guys. Right. There are some great talents out there. There's some very, very from in all organizations. You know what I mean? But for me, for my taste, from my perspective, as a worker, which is different from being a wrestler, I think Randy Orton right now, top to bottom, there's guys that are close. I'll put guys like AJ Styles close. Will Ospreay's on his way there. He's still young. Still got a little, he'll get there. He's just not quite there yet, but he'll get there. And there's other guys there too. Bryan Danielson, they're on the list. So, but for me, there's something about Randy's presentation and everything that I find to be incredible.
I think that's probably going to be the match that most people are going to tip to probably steal the show this year. Mm-hmm. Other moments that you've been a part of in wrestling, some of the biggest, most talked about moments of all time. One of them, you're not often brought up in this story, but you were very close at hand in this story, was the Montreal Screwjob. Everybody always talks about the people backstage. They talk about Earl. They talk about Brett, Shawn, Vince. But not a lot of people bring up that you were actually out there at the time, or not at the time of the call, but out there during the match when Brett and Shawn were having this brawl on the outside, and you were really close to that action there.
Yes.
If, say, in a different universe, Earl couldn't have done that match that night. Mm-hmm. If you were asked to be in that position, would history be drastically different, or would it be very, very similar to the way it is now?
I'm going to be completely honest. At that time, I would have begrudgingly probably did what Earl did. I'm being honest. I mean, as much as I respected Brett, as much as I respect the business, it's one of those deals where you're caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place. You don't want to screw your friend, but at the same time, you're working for a company that the boss is asking you to do something, and if you don't do it, guess what? You won't be working for that company. And with all due respect to Brett, he's on his way to WCW to make a boatload of money. What about you if you don't do it? You'll be let go. Is he going to take you with him? I mean, it's just, it's a rock and a hard place. And that situation, because of the inner conflict between Brett and Shawn in that whole situation there, just, it wasn't a good situation overall. So it snowballed. It turned into what it was. And, Earl did what he felt was right for him. And, some guys were pissed off at first. Like some of the boys were like, I can't believe he did that. And one person who was surprised by it, but also understood it, was our locker room leader, The Undertaker. So, had a little talk with everybody, say, look, don't don't get hot at Earl. Earl was just doing what he was told to do, what he had to do. It's not, it's not something like he said, oh, well, pick me, I'll do it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
So, but again, to your question is, if I was asked to do what Earl did, I'll be honest, I probably would have.
I mean, there's so much history and there's been documentaries about, the
Mm-hmm.
aftermath, everything. You were as close as you could possibly be because you were out there next to these two competitors during that match. Was
Mm-hmm.
there any inkling at all for you that something like this was going to happen?
Not at all. It's funny because what they did for us was told us, like Earl, obviously, like you said, Earl was the referee for the match, and they said before the match they're gonna start a big brawl, fight through the crowd. You guys go out there and just basically make sure that nobody, gets their hands on these guys. We're pretending like we're trying to corral the action of these guys, but we're actually kind of, okay, guys, kind of keep the fans away, sort
Right.
of thing. So they're going to brawl, and then once the match gets into the ring and they start having their match, you guys come back, and at the end there's going to be a big schmoz, and you guys go out and go break it up again. And that's what we were told. So we went out and we got order restored, I guess, for lack of a better term, and the match started in the ring. And I was back in Gorilla, standing right beside the table with the monitors, watching the match because we were told, we're on standby, so when it breaks down and there's the big schmaz at the end, we're going to run out and try and help break it up and restore order, whatever the case may be. And I'm sitting right beside Bruce Pritchard, who was the one who was manning our IFBs who spoke to us in the ring.
Right.
And it gets to the point where, I'm standing right beside Owen and Davy Boy. They're waiting for their cue to go out there and run. And I think Hunter was there as well, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so I'm standing right beside Bruce, and I'm just waiting for everything to go down. They were going to run down, and we were going to run out behind them, and you know. And as Sean got Brett in the sharpshooter, Earl had just taken a bump, and
Yeah,
Sean
that's
gets
right.
Brett in the sharpshooter, and I hear, because you can't talk to us individually, we're on the same uh, uh,
Like
whatever it's called,
wavelength. Is it? Yeah.
wavelength. Yes. So I hear in my earpiece, and I'm standing right beside Bruce, and he was the guy who has the talk button to us and the microphone. And I hear, okay, Earl, get up now, Earl. And I'm looking, and it's not Bruce,
Right.
and I'm thinking, what the hell? And then Earl gets up, and ring the bell now, Earl, ring the bell now. And you can hear the audio from the ring. Vince is screaming, ring the bell, and everything went down. And I'm not processing. I'm not putting two and two together. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? And then you saw the complexion, especially Davy Boy's face. Owen looked very disappointed, and Davy Boy, you can tell he was mad. And that's when everybody realized, guess what? They just did him dirty.
But yeah, I think he was in such a an enviable position. Like you said, you know, even if it was me who was a massive Bret. Okay, I didn't know that Bret Hart fact that you said at the start of the show, but I
Mm-hmm.
consider myself a very big Bret Hart fan. Um, even, but if I was put in that position, like you said, if he's going on to this new contract, he's going to have a job at the end of the day.
Right.
If I don't do my job, there's no guarantee that that other company is going to take me on as well. You got to,
Right.
and even if you don't think about that, it's such a quick decision. On the day, you're not going to have time to process all that anyway.
No. 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 And I don't know if he was approached the day before, the day of. It's all in his book. He has a
Mm.
book. You know, laying out the entire story. So, plus some other things in there. I'm sure it'd be fun to read. But yeah, if people are inclined, go out there and pick it up. I'm sure he's got his. You know, there'll be a lot of stuff in there that people will be very interested in.
Yes. Jimmy, there's with interviews with you, and it's hard for me to bring up because we're not a type of channel that kind of are looking for soundbite. It's more about the positive stories of people's careers, and it's about celebrating different people. That's why we get them on. But I feel like there's always an elephant in the room with your interviews, and it's kind of when are they going to bring up a certain subject?
Right.
And I'm going to preface this first. I won't ask the question or I won't even bring up the subject if you wouldn't like me to, and we can edit this bit out if you would like to, because you obviously know where I'm gonna go with this.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because you were part of the match, the moment, which is one of the most, well, I would say it is the most awful night in wrestling history. The night that obviously Owen Hart passed away. And you were in the ring with Godfather at the time, for that match, sorry, and you were actually in the ring at that time. What's the best way of putting that? Try and describe as best as you can, if you don't mind, obviously, of what that kind of moment was like for you, leading up to that moment, and that awful, tragic night.
No, it is tough. I mean, many years later, it's. I don't want to say it's easier to talk about, but it's still difficult. It's it brings back certain memories. I mean, like leading up to the tragedy, there was nothing out of the ordinary. You know what I mean? It was really a tragic accident. Prior to that match, there was a hardcore match going on in the ring, and there was an interview playing on the screen, a pre-taped interview with Kevin Kelly and Owen, who was the Blue Blazer. And I was kind of half watching that while helping clear out some of the stuff from the ring, because there was a hardcore match prior to that, and there were broken tables and that sort of thing, and got it pretty much cleaned out. And I was kind of kicking some stuff out, and I heard a scream, which I don't know if it was Owen, but somebody had told me that it probably was, because you're in a building with 16,000 people, so you know what I mean. You don't, and then in an instant, I felt something brush by me, like by my right side, and I was holding the top rope, which got pulled out of my hand, snapped back, and I thought my first instinct was the top rope broke. Something happened to the top rope, and I didn't realize. So I looked around and didn't saw the rope was intact. And then I looked right there in the corner where I was walking towards. There he was, and he was there. And my brain at least, it didn't process. I didn't clue in to what was going on. I was like, again, I was stunned. I was like, okay, what the hell's going on here? I know he's supposed to descend, and it didn't click. So I called out a couple of times, and there was no response whatsoever. And that's when I panicked and started screaming for help. And that's when Jerry Lawler got up from the desk and came over and stuff like that. And I didn't know at the time obviously all the details and stuff like that. And then when we found out later, it was like horrible. It was horrible.
In that moment, I know obviously everybody in the back didn't know what to do. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler didn't know what to do. Nobody could have known what to do in that moment. And hindsight is 2020, like they say. But in that moment, if you were calling the shots, do you think you could have, or you would have made the call to carry on that show?
No.
No.
I mean, like you said, it's easy to look back upon it, but at the same time, I don't fault any of the talent that had to go out there after that and have to perform, because none of them, their mind was in the right place. Their mind was with their friend,
Of course.
our brother. You know what I mean? So I don't envy them. I just, you know, I know people can make a case for one way or the other. In my mind, you know, especially now, all these years later, there's no way that I believe that show should have continued. And I get the fact that you've got 16,000 people there. I get it. And I get the fact that people are watching on pay-per-view. Yes, I get it. But at the same time, we lost a brother, a family lost a brother, a father, a husband, you know, a son. It should have stopped, bottom line. And I don't care what our old boss said on that documentary where he said, well, if it was me, the show continue. I don't care what you say. That to me, it doesn't make it any better.
No. I mean, it is just one of the, well, like I said, it's for me, it was one of the worst moments of all time. You know, I was only 99, so I would have been 14ish, 13, maybe 14, and you know, obviously we were taping them off Sky TV at the time,
Right.
and it just became this kind of like just unbelievable thing, you know, on the playground the next day. You know, people were talking about it, you know, even people that weren't interested in wrestling, you know, they'd heard this crazy story. It's just yeah, unbelievable. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that, though. I know that obviously can't be easy, but you know, I feel like well, your story is kind of the closest story in that night, because obviously you were in the ring at that time. You know, and unfortunately, obviously.
Yeah.
But moving on from, you know, that awful topic, you've started your and this is in a positive thing, you've started your ref rants on Twitter these days, which are brilliant. What made you start to do that? What was that first well, what was the first ref rant? What was the first thing that made you decide to do these videos?
Well, I didn't have, it wasn't my idea. After I'd left WWE, you know, I took some time away from wrestling to decompress from wrestling completely. And then I found out that in my mind, I wanted to start broadcasting in some form or fashion. So took a course in broadcasting and that sort of stuff. And the opportunity came where someone who became a really good friend of mine, Ardo Cal, who he's like my little brother. He works now at ESPN here not here in the United States. I'm in Canada still, but he brought me on board to the network, television network, and the radio network that aired WWE programming up here in Canada. So it started off, it was called Right After Wrestling, and then it morphed into Aftermath, and it was a TV show. It was a weekly TV show where we do recaps and previews and that sort of stuff. So as the advent of social media started to get bigger and bigger, my wife says to me, you know, you should do something online, like maybe a video, maybe a minute-long video about something in wrestling. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And she says, no, everybody's online. It just has to be a minute long, so because people's attention spans aren't too long. And I said, yeah, I get that. I know that. She said, just a minute long. And she goes, you can rant on something. She goes, I see you watching and you rant on everything. So I said, oh, so what do you think? What would be a cool name? Ref and Rant? She goes, there you go. You got the name. She goes, I'll shoot them for you. It's a minute long. Go. And it started, I don't know what, 6 years? I've been doing it for like 6 years now, or something like that. It's been doing it for a while. And some people enjoy them. Some people don't, which, look, I'm giving my opinion, which is all it is. It's not, if you don't like my opinion, that's fine. It's like flavors of ice cream. That's the latest analogy that everybody uses.
Yeah.
Wrestling is like ice cream. There's 31 flavors of ice cream at Baskin Robbins. That's fine. There's a flavor there for everybody. But in my opinion, yes, there's a flavor there for everybody. But your two stalwart flavors are what?
Vanilla.
Chocolate and
Yeah.
vanilla and chocolate.
Of course.
There you go. But anyways, that's the origins of the Ref and Rant. That's how it started. And now it's like it morphed from something I saw on television, which is mainly what I do. I'll see something in one of the, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, whatever the case may be, and I'll say, "Oh my goodness, why?" Or something that's really good. It's not always a critique.
No.
Sometimes it's like something is really good, and I'll go, "You know what? This was really good." And in my mind, this is how wrestling should be presented.
Yes.
You know, but that's how it started, and it keeps going, and there's no lack of content, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
How do you deal? You slightly mentioned it, like the bad comments. Obviously, you get good ones as well, and some of the comments are just so so off the wall. You read them sometimes, and you're like, "Well, I obviously wasn't saying that. How can you get that perspective from what I just said?" How do you deal with some of the the maddest comments that you get on those videos?
Well, I respond to people as they reply to me. If you're genuinely questioning something I said and you do it in a respectful manner, you know what? You're gonna get the same back. And if you're a little snarky, you'll get a little snarky back. And if you're really off the wall, then you know what? You're gonna get, maybe not in kind, but you'll get a reply that or I'm trying to see what this is the thing. I'm trying to, when these guys come on and they start going full throttle like that, I go, okay, here's someone I could have a little fun with. And they don't get that.
Right.
They don't get that. And then every once in a while, somebody like all of a sudden MJF one day tweets at me. I didn't even include him in the tweet. I didn't tag him or anything, but he found it. And he tweets me, and of course he calls me a bald, ignorant, F word, of course, grifter. Grifter's the new, I guess, insult.
Yes.
But anyways, and I'm like, really? Did you even hear what I said? And lately, Dave Meltzer has been jumping on board, trying to fill me in on the history of wrestling. And I thank you, Dave. I don't need it. I didn't ask for it. I don't need it. And some of his replies are kind of twisting what I'm saying. Like, I'll give you an example. Recently on Collision, I saw a sequence with Hologram and Blake Christian.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of the overly choreographed, synchronized dance routines that these guys do. That's me. And that's all I said. It's not a knock on the company. It's not a knock on the guys. I don't like that presentation. And then some guy came at me and said, well, that's the evolution of wrestling. I said, no, that's not the evolution of wrestling. That's not what the premise of wrestling is supposed to be. Professional wrestling is not supposed to be that. Yes, it evolves over time. But that's not evolution. That's basically trying to reinvent the wheel. And you can't. Because if the wheel is not round, then it doesn't roll forward. Right. So then here comes Dave going, well, Lou Thez said that Shawn Michaels, all Shawn Michaels does in the ring is dance. Wait, okay. What Shawn Michaels does in the ring is dance. The generation before Harley Race thought he oversells and it looked ridiculous and all this. Okay, but that's not the point here.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm saying this takes all the spirit of what pro wrestling is out of the equation. What this looks like is two guys. We know that it's a collaboration between the two, but the idea is to make it look. Pro wrestling is supposed to resemble a combat sport, and there's supposed to be reasons why two people are having a match in the ring and trying to win the ring, or win the match, whether it's a stipulation involved to advance their career for a title. If there's a feud where you really, really have something against this person, it's a personal issue, but to me, that's not what that is.
Right.
That to me is putting on a performance. Is no different than breakdancing in the Olympics or Dancing with the Stars. That's me.
Yeah.
And to say, to pick out names like Harley Race and stuff like that, and for him to say, well, Lou Thesz said this about Shawn Michaels. Well, if you're comparing me to Lou Thesz, thank you very much.
Right.
I appreciate that. If you're putting me in that same category, hell, I'll take it.
I was going to bring it out about Dave Meltzer because obviously I've seen the back and forth between some of you guys' tweets, and even today, I think when I looked this morning, I was like, oh no, they're tweeting each other again. Like I say, we always try to. We always try to see the positive sides to wrestling. So even somebody who it could be considered arguing, I guess. Somebody like, say, Dave Meltzer that you're arguing with, who you have disagreement on certain issues. And he's definitely one of those people that is a polarizing figure, along with, say, like a Tony Khan. Some people love them, some people hate them.
Right.
What could you say that is a positive about Dave Meltzer to you?
One, the fact that he is such a historian. Right. He does know his wrestling history. There's no denying that. And I love the fact that he brings attention to the industry. For the most part, he tries to be positive, but I'll get called out for this, and I don't care. To me, when I read what he has to say and some of his takes, when he's reporting from a journalistic standpoint, that's different from opinion.
Yeah.
That's completely different. And like when he starts lately reporting stuff about, again, I pick AEW because that's who he talks about the most.
Right.
Lately. And when he brings up the fact that, the second most profitable company in history, blah, 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 and all these things, he makes these comments, but then again, he's saying that nobody has seen these numbers. When he talks about the numbers on Max and their ratings numbers from their streaming service, the Max streaming service in US, no one has seen those numbers. And he claims that nobody from AEW has seen those numbers. So how could they make that claim about their numbers being what they are? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive with me. Show me proof. If you're a journalist, you're supposed to double source your stories. You don't just take somebody's word for it. You have to double source it. And do I want to say he has a bias? I don't know if he actually does, but some of the stuff he says makes it appear that he does. And when some people call him out on it, he gets defensive. And that's where the arguments end up between whether he tweets me about something that I said that he feels need to, in his mind, correct me on, or whether it's Eric Bischoff or my buddy Raj or somebody else like that. Lately, everybody on Twitter, he wants to fight.
Right.
And it feels like he's more defending than he is presenting an argument with actual tangible facts.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean, and I'm glad. See, even in that, it was a very balanced thought process that you spoke out then, because even as somebody who keeps going at you on Twitter and stuff, you still can respect certain aspects of Dave Meltzer, somebody like that. I think that seems to be lost on a lot of people on the internet these days. We do hear about things like tribalism and stuff. You
Hmm.
don't have, and everybody is not necessarily one thing. You can't put somebody just because they like so and so in a certain bracket.
Hmm.
Everybody has certain sides to them, and we all do have pros, and we
Hmm.
definitely do all have
Absolutely.
cons.
Absolutely. People say that I have a bias. I have a bias to a certain style.
Yeah.
I have a bias to a certain presentation and how it's done. Uh, what you're talking about has filtered down through all parts of society, whether you talk politics,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Unfortunately, um, wrestling fans have followed that same lead, and they've amped it up. It's listen, folks, it's a form of entertainment. That's like saying if I tell you what comedy show was very popular back in the day. Uh, Pick one. I'll tell you. Pick
Um,
any.
Seinfeld.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Full disclosure, I love Seinfeld.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite comedies. But let's say I said, you know what? I don't find it funny. Oh, then you don't know comedy. No, I know comedy that I like. That's not the comedy I like. That's all it is. I just like, for me, when it comes back to wrestling, I just like my wrestling to make sense.
Right.
Give me reasons to watch other than, oh, that guy's pretty good and that guy's pretty good. I'll put them in the ring. Let's see how they go. That only does so much for me. Yes, we're going to get a good match out of it, but I want reasons for these matches to occur. And the whole premise of wrestling from day one, since the beginning of time, was good versus evil, bad guy, good guy, heel, babyface, and protagonist and antagonist. That's what sells tickets.
Right.
Bottom line. It has from the beginning. Quick analogy for you. I always use this, and I'm 100 times, and say it again. When the wheel was invented, it was made of stone. Then it evolved. It became wood because wood was lighter and easier to transport. Then it became rubber. Then it became vulcanized rubber, run flat tires, winter tires, summer tires, all season tires, all these different variations of the tire, of the wheel. But at the end of the day, the wheel is round. Again, like I said earlier,
Right.
because if it's not round, it can't go forward. Sometimes these guys are trying to reinvent the wheel, putting a square peg in the round hole. That's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to do.
Lastly, before we let you go, Jimmy, and thank you so much for spending time with us today,
Mm-hmm.
you released your autobiography back in 2013, I believe.
Yes.
What was it like writing that autobiography, and how much pride do you still have in that piece of work?
Not only pride in myself, again, I have to thank my wife, whose idea it was to begin with, because she's the one who pushes me to do these things, gets me off my butt, and you know what, you need to write a story about your life. I said, and I'm of the mindset. I said, who's going to want to read my story? She goes, you'll be surprised how many people want to know, where you came from, how you started, you know, your background, where you ended up, and going after wrestling and the whole story. And I thought, yeah. But then I'm thinking, it's going to take so much time to write so much, and I have to go back and think about. So she got me thinking. So what I would do is I would sit at home, and then a story would pop in my head, and I'd write it down. And I'd talk to her about something, or I'd be talking to some friends, and she'd go, "See, there's a story for your book." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe it is. So she helped me out, and I mentioned Greg Oliver earlier in our discussion. Once I got the original manuscript done, he looked it over and he says, "Yeah, this is a good story. Expand on this. Maybe you want to touch a little bit more on this." He helped me out
Right.
with presenting, because Greg is also an author. So I figured, who else? Who better to know? I'm not an author. I don't know how to write books. I mean, so he could help me out. And then he helped me out and helped me um, put it together, the chapters together, and then the fun thing is, he says you need someone to write the foreword for you. Get someone to write the foreword. And he says you should get somebody who's, you know, a well-known wrestling personality. And I thought, who would be good? And I thought, oh, well, Adam and I are good friends. Let me ask him. So I asked him, and he said he would be honored to do it, and he did. And that was like, wow, you know, special. So, and seeing it come to fruition and coming into print and out there and still out there.
It is.
If anybody wants to get it, it's still available out there, and it means a lot. It means a lot that people are interested in my story. I can't, I still sometimes think I can't believe it, but well, it's cool. It is cool. It's really cool.
There are definitely people that are interested in your story, Jimmy. I know we talked about all the positives. Obviously, we had to touch on some heartbreaking stories as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a good overall short 1 hour version of your WWE career. Thank you so much for coming on today. Like I said, you were on all those VHS tapes that I bought when I was a kid. Maybe, like you said, you were in the background, but you were still there. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for everything that you've done. We got to obviously plug the radio show that you also do. It's
Mm-hmm.
Donnie De Silva that you do the show with, right?
Right. Donnie De Silva and I do a show here on TSN Radio called Huge Pop Radio. We also have a website, hugepopradio.com. You can catch all our episodes and interviews and that sort of stuff there. And also do a podcast with former WWE referee and TNA referee Brian Hebner, the lineage there, as everybody knows. And also joining our show this year was head TNA official Daniel Spencer. So yeah, so we've made it a trio. So it's actually a 3 count of referees, which is kind of cool.
Well, thank you again. Stay on the line, Jimmy. Obviously, we'll do a proper goodbye once we're off the air. But
Okay.
there we go, guys. That was another podcast in the books. I can't thank Jimmy enough for coming on, showing us the time of day today. Some amazing stories I think you'll find there today. If you did like the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave some comments down below, because all those always do help that algorithm. And as always, guys, look after each other, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.